gentlemen, good morning. It's Sunday morning. It is football day, and the Fantasy Football Buzz podcast is here with you. And let me tell you something. If you spend more time managing your team than you do spending time with your wife and kids, or if you've ever rooted against your home team in favor of your fantasy team, then you're in the right place.
You're all kind of people.
We are going to give you all of the information that you need today for today's games, tomorrow night's games, tonight's games. So listen up. And by the way, if you have questions about who you want to start, give us a call or comment. Send us a comment in Facebook Live or in YouTube Live. I'm going to go ahead and I'll throw the number up. 772-800-BUZZ. You can give us a call, and we will answer your question live on air. 2020 Cyclops, the crew is with you today. How you guys doing?
You know what? I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I've got a great, I believe at least, question of the day. And I want to hear both of your answers. And any caller that calls in, I want you to answer this question. Your games are on the line, your fantasy football matchup. And if you're in multiple leagues, pick the one you care about the most, or your home team. You can choose one of them wins. Who do you go with? Your true NFL home team or your fantasy football game?
Are you talking about this week?
Any week. Right
now,
now,
you can't say any week, because what if it's a Super Bowl? What if it's a
not
game
Super
that
Bowl,
you need to get into the playoff?
Okay, you always have to go there. Jesus Christ!
No, I'm a lawyer. This is what I do.
Freaking
I have
attorney.
to understand the facts in order to, because
permission to approach. I object.
It depends on it's such
you can't handle the truth.
You need me on your bench. You want me on your bench.
Last year, when we wanted the Dolphins to tank, right? We wanted them to lose,
right.
so it was okay.
Okay, so no. Stop. You're overthinking. Jesus.
Yes.
Right. Overthinking. It's a regular season game. It's midweek. It's an important win, but it's not the Super Bowl. It's not getting you in the playoffs. It's just a week you really want to win.
What's my current fantasy football record in this scenario?
Seriously, if I could punch you through the camera, I would. So that's the question. I'm not giving any more specificity. I've only had one cup of coffee.
So the question is, are you rooting for your home team or are you rooting for your fantasy football team to win if only one of the two could happen?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
Okay. All right. Well, we want to know. I mean, it is a good question. There's a lot of, factors involved, but I'm not going to get into that again. But give us a call at 772-800-BUZZ.
Wait a minute. I want your answer.
We will.
I have to think about it because it all depends on a bunch of scenarios. So
you know what? I'll tell you what. This week is a good week because we're all, sadly, admittedly, Dolphin fans on this podcast. We are 2-3. We win this game. We're 3-3. Buffalo's got a tough matchup. We're possibly one game out of first place. We're I don't know, about a third of the way.
So basically, what you're saying is, like, if you have Devontae Parker on your roster and you need 6 points to win your fantasy game, or he doesn't catch a touchdown, or maybe they catch catch a touchdown. Whatever the scenario is,
you have a choice.
How do you want that to play out?
Let me give you an answer. I'll try. Okay. Last week, I lost both of my fantasy football in both of my fantasy football leagues, but the Dolphins not only won, but they demolished the 49ers. And you know what? I didn't have a bad day. I actually wasn't as depressed as I normally get when I lose. But when it happens the other way around, for some reason, I guess because I've been rooting for the Dolphins for 55 years, that I think there's more invested in the Dolphins than there is in my fantasy team, which comes and goes. Dolphins stay forever. I'm going to have to go with my home team.
So, it's interesting. Cyclops and I actually experienced this exact dilemma last week. We were in a very tight game in a Yahoo league that we literally lost by 3 points. By the way, Justin Herbert, who I mentioned as a quarterback to pick up, saved us and got us back in that game. He had such a good week. But we played the San Francisco defense, and that defense actually got us -2. If they just even have a non-horrific showing to the Dolphins, we would have won that game. We just needed 1 point out of them, not -2.
It's called karma.
It was very interesting. I mean,
You
San
don't
Francisco
start
going
against,
into
you
the
don't start a
season was
defense against the Dolphins.
well. They're also a very depleted
Well,
defense without Bosa and Solomon, and they're half their team gone. So they were supposed to be a formidable defense. So the question is, and actually, Cyclop, I'll post it to you because you're on this team with me. Would you change a thing? Now, what I would change is have the Dolphins win, maybe not put up so many points, and then we could still win both and have it all, right? But at the same time, like you, Seth, I'm not as old as you, old man, so I don't have 55 years of being a Dolphins fan, but I love my fish. I want them to
You're not
win.
far behind.
Shut up.
Yeah, you make it sound like you're 30.
Right.
Come on, man.
Yeah, but
All right, let's move on.
okay. I just think it's a good question. I want to hear from our viewers.
Fair enough.
Your football team or your fantasy football team, where's your priority? It's an
Give us a
interesting
call,
question.
772-800-BUZZ, or go ahead and comment at Facebook Live or YouTube Live, and we'll get right to you. But what I want to do, we're going to be talking about Stardom Sit-em this morning. We got the games coming up in 2 hours, and we want to be able to help you. So go ahead, let us know if you have any questions, if you have a dilemma between certain players. We are here to help you. But first, we're going to go ahead and give you some updates, news, and notes on what's going on around the NFL. What's happening?
All right, so let's start off by who's ruled out this week. I know a lot of people are waiting for Sunday to get that information, but what we know so far out this week, of course, Dalvin Cook, Dawson Knox, tight end for Buffalo, Christian McCaffrey obviously still out, KJ Hamler still out in Denver, Noah Fant also out, Jordan Akins, Mo Allen Cox, Sammy Watkins out, Sam Darnold still out, Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson depleting that wide receiver crew in Philadelphia. Deontay Johnson out. Melvin Gordon will be out today as well. Austin Eckler, of course, and still Nick Chubb. People that were questionable and had any kind of an injury designation but are expected to play. Some good news from Matt Ryan and that Atlanta team. Julio Jones is coming back. That's going to help a lot of fantasy all the way around. We're going to talk about that. Hayden Hurst is also expected to play, as well as Russell Gage. Miles Boykin, Curtis Samuel, Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield, Jarvis Landry, John Brown. All these are all expected to play, as well as Julian Edelman, Darius Slayton, Brashard Perryman, Leonard Fournette, and Drew Lock. And just some interesting note, a little color on this. Melvin Gordon, interesting news, unless you're buried under a rock somewhere. I'm sure you heard that on Tuesday he was picked up with a DUI. And the interesting news there is that the Broncos are not going to institute any kind of disciplinary action against him. However, that doesn't mean that the league may or may not impose some kind of a fine or some kind of a game time suspension. So stay tuned there. If you have Phillip Lindsay on your bench, you are pretty happy at that possibility. Dwayne Haskins will not be playing this week. I believe it was due to an illness. So you have Kyle Allen there. That's not going to be any fantasy play there, but that does impact Terry McLaurin. And Brashard Perriman, I said, is coming back. The relevance there is, people are underrating and just overlooking how valuable Jamison Crowder is. He is the only startable player in that offense, and he is a wide receiver one. He has been playing as a wide receiver one. I don't know if Perriman coming back is going to hurt or help. We're going to see, but it looks like he had the same chemistry, Crowder with Flacco, as he did with Sam Darnold. Drew Lock is coming back, although unfortunately he's losing Noah Fant, but I think that makes Tim Patrick still a pretty nice play, as well as I would say feel comfortable in firing up Jerry Jeudy.
You're doing our Stardom Sit-ems during your updates.
I'm just giving a little color, if you will, to my news. Is that a problem? Sony Michel was placed on.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, kind of.
A little tiny bit. Sony Michel was placed on the COVID IR list. Le'Veon Bell, as we all know, officially signed with the Chiefs, not playing today, but he will be in their backfield. Sterling Shepard, we talked about that. He didn't practice Friday.
What did you just say about the Chiefs? I'm sorry.
That Le'Veon Bell is now signed with the Chiefs, and he is now part of that backfield.
Okay, so let me stop you right there. Because of COVID protocols, Le'Veon Bell is not allowed to play in Week 6. So we will not see Le'Veon Bell with the Chiefs. We will see Clyde Edwards-Helaire in his last start for the Chiefs this week. Okay, go ahead.
That's correct. That is correct. And that's pretty much all of the news. Other than that, that's all the players. And anyone else that wasn't mentioned is obviously playing. Nice to see Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, not even listed on the injury report. That's pretty nice to see. Stuff like that. Some interesting stuff around COVID. It's been an exciting and then thankfully a bland week. No games rescheduled. There were a couple games in jeopardy. Atlanta came out with a bunch of false positives. That turned around. Okay, Titans had someone on their practice squad, but everything's from a COVID standpoint. We're out of DEFCON 4, 3, and 2. We seem to be pretty somewhat quiet all games, ready to go at their normal times.
If I had a whistle, I'd blow it. I'm calling a timeout here. There have been a total this week. There have been a total of 9 players from 6 different teams: the Eagles, the Falcons, the Jags, the Panthers, the Patriots, and the Ravens have all placed at least one player on the COVID list since yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So there are things brewing. There are things happening. As to whether or not it's spreading throughout the teams, luckily they're getting tested on a daily basis, but just know it is not as clean as it seemed weeks 1, 2, and 3. Right. Then we had the issue of teams of missing games, of having to postpone and cancel. Like you said, we're playing all of them this week. We don't have to worry about any of that. What I'm worried about are these 9 players from these 6 different teams since yesterday, and we all know how this spreads. So. Right. It is something to definitely keep an eye on.
Definitely. I was just talking
that's the big question is how much, day 1, day 2, day 3, I think a lot of people got more of a grasp of it when 20 plus people in the White House got sick after. It wasn't, one day after or 2 days. It was almost
right. It happened over a week or two. Right.
Right. And so people start understanding that just because you test negative today doesn't mean you're not incubating it and it's not there. So that's what we have to keep an eye on as more and more players, as 12 players from the Jacksonville Jags practice squad get put on the COVID list. How does that going to affect them this coming week? Not just that they tested negative today.
There are definitely some isolated incidents and I think that's going to happen all year. But I think the positive here is, at least with the information that we have right now, it's not been in any kind of an outbreak scenario on any of the teams, and no games have had to be rescheduled. So when you compare that to last week,
except the Gators,
and the week before, I'm saying this is somewhat of an improvement. Let's hope they stay isolated.
All right.
So we're going to go ahead and we appreciate the updates. Thank you, Keith. We appreciate that. We're going to go ahead and move on. I know that Jonah had answered your question, Keith, about football team versus fantasy team. And Jonah's response was football team, the Dolphins, because he doesn't want to lose to Adam Gase and Joe Flacco.
So you know what?
And that's a 1 week scenario.
That's a 1 week scenario.
That's what he said this week.
Okay, so hold on. But I'm curious. I want to go deeper than that. Yeah. Jonah answered the question. We're not playing to the Jets. We're playing someone in the NFC. We're playing the Seahawks or whatever.
Again?
Whatever. we're playing another team.
Okay.
This week. Answer. I agree. I never want to lose to the Jets.
Okay. All right. So let us know on that. I also do have a question that was just texted to me, a stardom question. Chase Claypool or Jamison Crowder? We have a season book of Crowder, like you said, as being a wide receiver number 1. Claypool had the most amazing week. Does that translate again this week? And I know you have him, Brad, in 1 or 2 of your leagues. How would you answer that with Crowder and Claypool?
Out of these two, so 2020 already went into my some of my stardoms because he was and Crowder. He's on the Jets, so people don't really think about him. But if you have him on your fantasy team, you want him. I'll just go into my start. Right, for this week with the wide receiver, because this question is posed. Now you have Claypool coming off this amazing game and Deontay Johnson out there this week. So you have Juju and Claypool, and we see that they've used him in a lot of different ways. Crowder, listen to these numbers: 7 for 115, 7 for 104, 8 for 116, 13, 10, and 10 targets, and a few TDs. And he's going against the Dolphins, who are in the bottom third against the pass. Okay. He is your solid start.
Okay.
Man. Still. Okay.
Brad, do you have his wide receiver ranking for the season? I know he's top 10. I think he's like 7.
All right, so
like
so you're saying Crowder over Claypool?
This week it's a really tough week because you have Claypool without Deontay Johnson there.
Well, no, I'm not suggesting that you don't. That Claypool isn't a starter, but if you have to pick between the two of them,
I mean, this week, the other thing is you have Pittsburgh goes against the Browns, right?
Yeah,
is that right this week? They're almost last in the league against the pass,
right?
So but the Dolphins can be lit up too.
They can. This week, just between those two, I go with Claypool just because he's been hot, and they're going to have to score against the Browns. I know that, he's a rookie and everything else, but I go with Claypool this week.
And I'm going to disagree. I think Crowder's going to have more receptions and yards just because he is the only guy in that team you can count on. Where with Big Ben, you got Connor, Johnson's out, but Juju's still there. It's an unknown. Claypool's very good. It was one huge week. You just said it yourself. Every week with Crowder, it's 100 yards.
I'm going to go with Claypool just because of the chemistry that they have with Roethlisberger and Claypool. Flacco's now coming in, starting for the Jets. I don't know what's going to happen with Crowder. I know between Byron Jones and X-Man, whether or not they're even going to have the ability to get Crowder the ball. So in this case, I go with Claypool. So there you have it. Two for Claypool, 1 for Crowder. Sorry I didn't answer the question. Jonah did answer your question, though, Keith, and he said Dolphins any week of the season. I have raised my son correctly.
Yep, that's
nice. I am a very proud daddy moment right now.
He's an originalist.
Okay, so
Jonah just said Nick Needham is covering Jamison Crowder because he's in the slot. So Crowder will probably be the whole offense today.
And that's my point. Xavier Howard will be on the outside against Perriman.
Yeah, but we hope their whole offense is going to be like 3 points, right?
There's going to be garbage time. There's going to be a lot of garbage time.
All right.
Well, a lot of people picked up the Dolphin defense this week against the Jets, so it'll be interesting to see. Now, Ryan Griswold has sent us a comment in a 16-man league.
I think it's Grosswald.
What did I say? Griswold? Like vacation?
like for vacation.
Sorry, Ryan.
Go ahead, Sparky.
Sorry about that.
Your new nickname is Sparky. Go ahead.
I'm sure this is not the first time he's been called that. I've got John Brown, and assuming he's a go, should I flex Adam Humphries or Randall Cobb? In my 10-man league, I have to choose my flex between Calvin Ridley and Allen Robinson. In your 10-man league, that's a great choice to have to make between Ridley and Robinson. I'm curious who your receivers are that you have to flex Ridley or Robinson. So go ahead and comment. Let me know on that 10-man league between Ridley and Robinson. I like Ridley this week a lot, just because we're playing against that Minnesota defense, which actually is it Minnesota. They've given up a lot. I think they're playing Minnesota.
Man, you're getting down there. I understand it's a 16-man league, but you're
Humphries.
You're getting down there with Humphries and Cobb to have to flex, but I get it in a 16-man league.
Is that a PPR league? I'm also want to know on that if that's a PPR league. And then it might be easier to answer that question.
And they're both crapshoots in those offenses where any week they have the possibility of going off. Humphries did look good when A.J. Brown was out and they were featuring him and Davis. So, I mean, that's a pick 'em. That's too hard to predict. That's flipping a coin. And I know I'm going to go against the grain and I'm going to stay away from that name, Calvin Ridley. I mean, obviously you're going to say, of course, Ridley over Robinson. But no, not for me, actually. If you look, Matt Ryan, there is something going on with him. And I have him in 3 leagues, and I'm benching him in all 3 leagues because he doesn't look right. Now, I know he's getting Julio back, but even with Julio there, he had 2 phenomenal weeks of the season. And then he had some incredible matchups. And for whatever reason, Matt Ryan is just not doing it. And Ridley has not been doing it because of Matt Ryan, where Allen Robinson is a target monster, a receptions monster. So if you're in a PPR, I'm going to go against the grain here. And until Matt Ryan shows me anything different than this garbage that he's been playing for the last 2 weeks, I would pick Allen Robinson because he is Nick Foles' favorite target.
I think the bottom line is you're going to get the same amount of points for both. I think both Ridley and Robinson are going to get about
similar,
probably around 15 points each. Obviously, they both have ceilings and they both have floors. I think that they're more or less the same this week. So that's just a coin flip, like you said. As far as Cobb and Humphrey, same thing, but much lower down the scale. I don't anticipate either one of them having an incredible week. If I had to pick one of them, that's tough. I'd probably go with Cobb, but I don't know. That's, to me, they're the same player, and even John Brown, I think, is in that same category for this week. So I don't know. Again, I think it's a coin flip. I apologize that we're not giving you a definitive answer.
Well, that's the point of having three. You want
That's
three.
right.
You want three.
I'm going with
Humphreys.
Humphreys. I'm going with Humphreys out of those
Okay.
two.
I would go Humphreys over Cobb as well. We have another. Who should I start here with, Claypool or Marquise Brown? And I would probably go Claypool in that regard. Marquise Brown's a great receiver. I love Hollywood. It's just, you never know what's going to happen in that offense. It's not something you can count on, where I think Claypool, especially with Deontay Johnson out, should be a really nice start this week.
All right. So I have a question for my own team. I'm going to pose it to you two. Ryan Fitzpatrick or Lamar Jackson?
Oh, jeez. And it's Lamar is going against Cleveland, right?
Lamar's going
until Fitzmagic shows.
No, Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, excuse me.
Until Fitzmagic shows that he's not going to throw for 300 yards a game, it's hard not to go with Fitz right now. Look, the truth of the matter is Myles Gaskin is a nice running back. Jordan Howard is no-show scratch last week. I think when it comes down to the red zone, it's all pass. So I think that the opportunities for Fitz has a much higher ceiling. Obviously, we know what Lamar can do, and I know a lot of people picked him up in the second or third round, where Fitz was probably a waiver pickup. But you got to look at your roster week to week, and I think this week against the Jets, you go with Fitz.
Over Lamar Jackson. Interesting.
And Lamar Jackson that
might just be this talking. I don't know. It might be a homer thing that I'm saying, but I'm just looking at the numbers.
Yeah. Ryan Fitzpatrick is the number 7 quarterback overall right now. Lamar Jackson is number 15. His numbers just are as where he got picked, they're just not there. So I picked up Fitzpatrick on a waiver, and he's putting up numbers. It's hard to go against him.
This is 6 weeks into the season. The knock on Fitzpatrick is, which week is it going to be Fitzmagic and which week is going to be Fitzpatrick? And other than week 1, and again, without a preseason and against a very, very stout New England defense, the last 5 weeks, Fitz is putting up the numbers. It is hard to sit Lamar Jackson, though. This is your number 2 hard. Or number 1, number 2, or possibly number 3 round pick. But I'm going to agree as well. I would go Fitzpatrick here.
You saw that Ryan did a shout out to Adam Reisner. I just want to say, Ryan and Adam, if Adam wants a shout out, he can call in to the show himself. He knows the number. He knows us. He should get on the phone and give us a call and talk about today's game, because he dug himself a hole. He's a Jets fan. And, he doesn't want to come out and tell us how bad the Jets really are.
Mm-hmm.
We've been there.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, so
I'll tell you what. Here's another very interesting. Hold on, another. Who should I start? And this is very interesting. And it's Andy Dalton or Matt Ryan. And just that defense in Dallas is so bad that Dalton is going to have to sit back and he's going to have to throw a lot. He's got the weapons. This is tough because Matty Ice does have a very, very nice matchup, and they're going to have to throw like crazy, and has all his tools back with the exception of Hayden Hurst. It's just he has been so bad. I'm actually tempted to say Andy Dalton here, because when he's had his tools in Cincinnati, he had many, 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 many games where he could go for 303 scores. So I actually think until Matty Ice gets right, I would actually pick Andy Dalton here with all of those weapons.
I have that same question. I have the ability to pick up Matt Ryan in a league who was actually a free agent, believe it or not. And I have chosen, and I have Andy Dalton, and I'm going with Dalton today. And the reason why is, we talk about quarterbacks against Minnesota, right? Which, let me see, Aaron Rodgers, got 30 points against them. Phillip Rivers, 11. Ryan Tannehill, 12. Deshaun Watson, 20. So it's not like it's an automatic with Matt Ryan. Andy with against Minnesota. Now Andy Dalton goes against Arizona. They gave up 19 to Jimmy Garoppolo, 13 to Haskins, 18 to Stafford, 27 to Teddy Bridgewater, and 13 to Flacco. And that's Flacco. So quite frankly, I'm not impressed with that Cardinal pass defense, and I'm going with Andy Dalton this week.
I agree, and I'm going with Andy Dalton there as well. He obviously they did a great job picking him up in the offseason to back up Dak Prescott just for this scenario. And CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper are both in the top 10 looking, every league's got different point structures, but they're less than a point apart in one league. They're like number 7 or 8 or 8 and 9 receivers.
And they still have Michael
out
Gallup
there
too.
And they have Michael Gallup, and they have Zeke to take the pressure off the pass. They have Schultz. He's proven to be a very good and serviceable tight end most weeks. They have the talent. They have the tools there. They're not throwing a quarterback in there that doesn't know what he's doing. And you saw it at the end of the week last week where he came up big and was able to make the big throws. And I'm going with Dalton here.
Yeah, I think Dalton is a dark horse to stay top 10 quarterback all the rest of the season, just because of that defense and his weapons. It's going to be interesting to track that.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Sorry, I cut out for a second. I'm like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we've answered the question. We appreciate that. The Red Rocket. That is true.
Yeah.
So we appreciate the comments. Keep them coming. I actually have a start 'em, sit 'em for you guys as well. And as soon as we're going to talk about our own teams. We have a few questions. The Matt Ryan one against Andy Dalton was actually one that I had, but I've got another one. And if you guys have any questions, I would, bounce them off of each other here. One of them that I have is, do I go with Laviska Shenault or Jerry Jeudy? Now, Jerry Jeudy is going up against New England. Chenault's going up against Detroit. They are projected very similar. Their defenses have given up just about the same amount of points to opposing wide receivers. So you look at floor, you look at ceiling. What are you doing, Shenault or Jeudy?
And Denver is playing New England, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And Jacksonville is playing. I know they have a pretty good matchup.
Jacksonville's playing Detroit.
Detroit. Okay.
Both of them, both the Lions and the Patriots, have given up an average of about 34 total points to opposing wide receivers. Not one wide receiver, but as a group.
Mm-hmm. It's funny, Commish, I have the exact same scenario, but not with Jerry Jeudy, but Tim Patrick. And that's really a 1A, 1B when you look at the amount of receptions and yards between those two. It's the exact scenario with Laviska Shenault as well as our Tim Patrick. And I can tell you, I've got Shenault in the lineup.
I do too. I was just curious what you guys thought.
I think Shenault this week, you still have DJ Shark. You don't know if he's playing yet. We haven't seen an update.
He is. They said he's expected to play.
Okay. Yeah. Last I've seen is a game time decision. He's expected to play, but he's still potentially hobbling around a little bit. But Detroit is going to put up points. They've had their bye week. They're rested. I think they're going to actually have a very good day there. So Jacksonville's going to have to try to keep up. So I think they're going to be moving that ball around. They're going to be passing. I go with Shenault this week against Detroit.
Let me say the two reasons that I went for it. Number one, Gardner Minshew has been there all year. Drew Lock is just coming back from an injury. And I believe as a pure passer so far for the season, Minshew is showing more consistency. He's putting up a lot of yards and he's getting the scores. And then secondly, he's at home. And quarterbacks always tend to play better at home. So in a coin flip, I think it was a little more than a coin flip. I like, and again, you have Jeudy, I have Patrick, but Patrick actually has been often getting more targets even. Yeah. So same scenario. I like Shenault here. He's just, that kid is a stud. This is going to be, in my opinion, a superstar receiver for years to come.
All right. So we do have another question from Mike Topless, who actually you shouldn't just be listening to the show. You should be on the show.
Exactly.
We wish you would join us on the podcast, and then you could actually ask us live on the air. But we'll go ahead and we'll read the comment. Is it Tyreek? Got to pick 3 of the following. These are really good receivers. Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, Robbie Anderson, Devontae Parker, Marquise Brown. Let's just start with Tyreek Hill. We know needs to be in the lineup.
Yes.
No question. I actually feel that AJ Brown needs to be in as well. I don't know. As far as the third, it's a coin flip. How do you guys feel about that?
Who is Carolina playing again?
Let me just say
Chicago.
This. Okay. Obviously, Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown, definitely back and healthy. No question there. Those two. Actually, Robbie Anderson has been playing very well. He's got almost over 100 or more every week. Devontae Parker. Okay, he was, and we're gonna going into my start and sit list. Listen to you think of him. He's the number 1 receiver there, right? Listen to his numbers. These are targets for the season: 4, 8, 5, 12, big week, and then 3. He's got 2 touchdowns. He really is not. It seems like he's doing more than he is. Right. It just seems like he's doing more than he is. Out of these, I stick with those first 3. Parker, just because they're going against the Jets this week, is actually on my start list. And he's going to start in most people's lineups just because it seems like he's doing more than he is. Last week he was 2 for 50. He's not having these amazing games. This week, those are tough to sit. You're not going to sit Hill. You're not going to sit Brown.
I like the first 3 on the list. I like Hill, Brown, and Anderson.
I would I would certainly stick with that as well this week. Anderson and Bridgewater certainly have a great connection, and he's looking to him often there.
Now, Mike and I have this thing where every week, not every week, but it used to be where Mike would call me up and ask me a stardom question. And I would tell him, and I would then continue to say, you have to start the opposite of what I tell you.
Right.
I'm always wrong. But so I'm going with the first 3 here. Hill, Brown, and Robin and Anderson. If I'm wrong, that's it's the way it's always been.
So
your boy
right,
Drew, we have another one, guys. You have to start 2.
All right. So this is really, really tough. Julio's back from injury. Right. It's always hard not to start Julio Jones, although we know that offense has not quite been right. You have as he calls Scary Terry McLaurin, I assume, Devontae Parker, who he just talked about, Claypool, and Boyd. So 2 out of those 5.
Wow, that's tough.
Boyd is on my sit list this week.
Yeah.
Okay. His high, and I'll go into that. Oh no, that's actually Juju. He's just going against the Colts, number 1 pass defense in the league.
Right.
I'm sitting him this week. Parker, we just talked about. Claypool, you have that upside, especially because Deontay Johnson's out. I'm going with Julio and Claypool out of those.
I'm going to tend to it for all the reasons that you just stated. I'm going to agree with you that as well.
Here's the thing, and I've got Julio. He's been on my bench, obviously, for a very long time, and it's extremely frustrating. If Julio plays, you have to play him. I think you just have to make sure that he is going to play. If he does, you start Julio. McLaurin going against the Giants defense, not that scary of a defense, but the question is, who's going to be throwing to him this week? And we already talked about Parker. We already talked about Claypool. Boyd, I agree. You stay away from Boyd. If you have to pick 2, I agree. I'm going with Julio and Claypool this week.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fairly obvious in that situation.
Okay, so the question I had, you guys answered, and I appreciate that. Do either of you have any questions about players on your team, people that you want to start and sit before we get into our list?
Yep, I have one more, and it is... Okay, hang on half a second. And 2020, this is the league, one of the leagues that we're in together. So we have, and we can start 6 out of these. Okay, Nick Chubb is hurt. Chase Edmonds, Darrell Henderson, Josh Jacobs is on bye. So Edmonds, Henderson, Madison, Mixon, and Montgomery. Okay,
Well, Madison's a given.
Madison's a given. Yeah, 100%.
And how many do you start out of what you just named?
But no, then also with your, I have 4 wide receivers as well, one on bye. So I know it's a lot. Robert Woods, Justin Jefferson, and Cooks. All right, Brandon Cooks, who had that huge week last week, and goes again. Week. Yeah, and he goes against Tennessee with the number 23 pass defense this week. Robert Woods against San Francisco, and Justin Jefferson against Atlanta.
Okay, so I'm really lost. There were so many players that you named, and I'm not sure how many spots.
So okay. So right now I have Chase Edmonds, Madison, Montgomery.
Okay.
And then Cooks, Jefferson, and Woods. Now I can switch to take one of those receivers out and add another running back, or switch one of the running backs, to another running back. So I could change Chase Edmonds to Mixon.
So who was not playing on that list?
Right now I have Mixon out against Indy, who's the number 3 run defense. So I have Edmonds in against Dallas. I have Madison in against Atlanta, of course.
Right.
Montgomery against Carolina.
Right.
And then those 3 wide receivers.
Okay. So my only concern is, the one time I sat Mixon, he had a career day.
Of course. Right.
So I'm afraid if you have Mixon, I think you have to start him every week.
Exactly.
You're choosing to start Edmonds, who has been doing well. He's sharing now with Drake. It's almost a 50-50 split, but Mixon isn't. They bring in Bernard on certain passing downs, not every passing down.
Right.
So I think that the share that Edmonds has is greater than the share that Mixon has, and even though they're going up against Indy, I have to go with Mixon here.
So over Edmonds. Okay, fair enough. Yep. So we're going with Edmonds.
Yep, there you go. And then, actually, I love that you asked this question. So I do have a pickle as well, and it's funny because I'm doing who to start for quarterbacks, and I know who I've rated, but I wanted your opinion. Gardner Minshew against Detroit, or Kirk Cousins going against Atlanta. And I know who I have in, and I'm curious where you sit with it.
I have to go with Minshew against Detroit, to be honest with you.
That's who I have.
So hold on. Before you're answering that, interesting. We just got a question from your boy Drew. Minshew, Brady, Kirk Cousins, or Matt Ryan? That's a lot of quarterbacks to have, but it's very interesting. Yeah.
And in all of those, because I actually dropped Matt Ryan in this league because I lost 2 games because of him, and he's not startable yet. You have Brady is interesting. I just think Gardner Minshew and that team. What's that?
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. So Minshew, Brady, Kirk Cousins, or Matt Ryan. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
So I think Matt Ryan we can eliminate between those, at least for me. So it's really between these. This is, you're right, Cyclop. This is exactly what we just talked about.
Right.
Now you're adding Brady into the mix as well. And Tampa Bay is playing who again?
Rodgers.
Green Bay. That is interesting. So if I had Brady,
and they're all healthy,
from
what it looks like, they have a full slate of health on the team.
Yeah. I might, in that situation, adding Brady to the mix, I might lean with Brady. He's put up 5 touchdowns 2 weeks ago. He's got his whole onslaught of receivers back. Green Bay is going to come out firing with that explosive offense. If I had Brady in that mix, I probably would go Brady. In my situation, though, I think I got Commish's answer. What about you, Cyclop?
Go ahead, Commish.
No, go ahead. I'm good.
Oh, out of your 2?
Yes, eliminate Brady, Minshew, Cousins.
I probably go with Minshew against Detroit.
Now add Brady.
That's a tough one for me. That's tough. Brady, just with everybody being healthy and knowing that they're going to have to try to keep up with Green Bay. Where is that game? Is that game in Tampa or in Green Bay?
Keep in mind, guys, Green Bay's their pass defense is not bad. They only gave up 12 points to Matt Ryan. Yes, they gave up 23 points to Drew Brees, but then they only gave up 17 points to Matt Stafford. So,
who do you go with here?
It's in Tampa.
I'm going with Minshew all day.
Minshew, okay.
Yeah.
Even with Brady. Wow.
Even with Brady, yes.
At home, too. Okay.
Yep.
Brady's very good at home, but I love that good. So I was firing up Minshew with confidence.
Brady is garbage.
I was, in one of the forums, I was looking at, it's like someone posted a question saying, it was during the week, and they said, "Who's that player that you won't let ever burn you again?" And they're like, right in their question, their answer was Kirk Cousins. It's like,
wow.
Another game we lost in the Yahoo League because of asshole Kirk Cousins gave us -2 points.
Yeah, and my answer to that is like Juju, right?
Yeah.
He killed me last year,
Yeah.
and then that's
Well, Commish, I
one of
think
my
this
players.
is a good segue to get into our stardoms. Unless we
Yeah,
have some
absolutely.
more.
And we're going to start with quarterbacks this
Start
week.
with quarterbacks. Okay, good. So let's talk about our stardom quarterbacks. So my first one, ironically, we've been talking about him ad nauseum, and it is going to actually be Gardner Minshew. I think I like the matchup in Detroit. Detroit does have a pretty good offense. They got all their faculties back over there. But what I like about Minshew is this guy over the last several weeks, and not just really through most of the season, he's just getting it done. Other than one bad week 3 against Miami, last week, the last 2 weeks, over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns each. He's only had 1 week without touchdowns. Other than that, the guy's got 10 touchdowns going into week 6, except for that one dud. So Miami's pass defense is, listen, as a homer, I hate to say it though, it is very exploitable, even with all the upgrades that we made in the backfield. In at the corner, I think Minshew's going to have a good week. He's got Chark back. He's got Shenault. James Robinson is the real deal, so they can run the ball. I love Gardner Minshew this week. It's a very nice start. I do have also Kirk Cousins is a good start this week. Now, granted, I had both on my team, so I had to make a decision, but you got to love the matchup with Atlanta. They have a banged-up secondary, even healthy. They're absolutely terrible. He is getting you, touchdowns every week. He had an awful week too, but he's got a really good matchup. He's really developing a nice chemistry with Justin Jefferson and with Adam Thielen there as well. He should have a decent week. And then we've got Big Ben as well. I love Big Ben. He's getting the touchdowns every week, minimum 2, if not 3 per week, every week. Last week against Philadelphia, he lit him up for 239 and 3 scores. He's really developing this incredible chemistry with Claypool. He will not have Deontay Johnson, but Ben's the kind of guy that's always going to find the receivers that are going to get open. He's really good at extending plays. I like Big Ben this week going against Cleveland, which has a pretty poor in secondary. We already talked about Fitzpatrick, so start him if you have him going against the Jets. He's been putting up points every week. And my last one is Ryan Tannehill. Now, Tannehill's interesting. He's not going off from a yardage standpoint. He's getting, on average about 250 yards a week, which is respectable, but he's getting you the touchdowns. And I like his matchup against Houston, which at one time was a pretty feared defense, but not so much right now. Tannehill's not taking a lot of dropbacks, but he is being unbelievably efficient with his passing. So he's got a nice matchup against Houston. He's been putting
Houston's actually the number 8 rated pass defense out there.
Yeah,
but they're not bad, but it's
the yardage. They're giving up yardage. They are giving up yardage. I think one of the reasons why they're 8 in passes because people have been running on them so much. So I don't know how that's being associated by touchdowns passed against or what, but from what I've seen, that is an exploitable secondary. So I feel pretty comfortable. And Tannehill's just been very sharp, and he's got with AJ Brown back, along with Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith, and then always the fear of Derrick Henry running the ball. I think you could fire up Ryan Tannehill with confidence as well. So those are my quarterback starts.
Before we get to the SID list, I just want to say some of the actives and inactives have been listed. Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield, DJ Chark, Drew Lock, Darius Slay, Julian Edelman, and Darius Slayton are all active this week. Curtis Samuel inactive, Auden Tate inactive. So really a lot of the players that people were questioning whether or not they would start this week or play this week, Beckham, Mayfield, Chark, Locke, Edelman, and Slayton are all playing. All right, so let's go ahead and get in. Do you have a group of sit quarterbacks?
We actually have another question. I didn't see that come in, but let's get to that real quick before we continue that. And we have Steve saying the Rams defense or the Pats defense.
I actually have the Rams defense, and I'm starting them this week. But if I had the Patriots against Denver, Locke is coming back, but we don't know what kind of week he's going to have. It's hard not to go with the Patriots this week.
Yeah, and the Rams are going against San Francisco, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
and Garoppolo will be starting.
Yeah, that might be a reason to start the Rams defense after last week.
It's hard not to start New England this week. I think they're going to be a top scoring defense this week, and I would go with New England.
I'd probably go with New England as well. They can, I heard a stat this week, or I saw a stat that Belichick is like 25-0 or whatever the number is, 50-0 against quarterbacks that are 25 and younger, or some crazy stat. It was unbelievable. So I have to find that to give exact, but he knows how to scheme against young quarterbacks, and they certainly are not fully loaded at their wide receiver, and they're missing Gordon. So I would definitely go with the Pats there as well.
Yep.
All right, so let's get back to our stardom sit-em list.
So on my sit list, I know he's been putting up numbers. A lot of it's garbage time, but I'm going to sit Carson Wentz against Baltimore. They're doing a good job getting after the quarterback. I think they're going to do a lot of ball control. Philly's not going to have the ball as much as they like. They don't have Deshaun Jackson. They don't have Alshon Jeffrey, which makes Travis Fulgham a nice play, by the way. But I'm sitting Carson Wentz against Baltimore, and believe it or not, even with the matchup, I'm just so down on him right now because I've seen him fail against other good matchups. I'm sitting Matt Ryan. Until this guy can show me something effort, there is something wrong with him, whether it's in his body or it's in his head. And you got to, for right now, it's prove it to me. So I would be sitting Matt Ryan.
Could have been the coach. He's gone.
It could have been. We'll see. But you know something? Before I get burned, and before you want to take a chance getting burned on him again, I'm going to prove it to me now. Phase with Matty Ice.
Okay. So Commish, I know we have stardom and situms, running back and wide receiver. There's a few here and there, but I wanted to bring this up and ask the question to 2020. It's something that was discussed between us this week, and you called with a question about 1 week trades, and we never heard the final decision that was made, if that was approved or not in the league that you were talking to us about.
So let's give a little background here. Yep. When we talk about 1 week trades, we're talking about a team trading somebody to another team with on the condition that player is returned the week after, so that the trade goes back to what it was the week before. You had asked us. My opinion was that is not moral or ethical when it comes to fantasy football. And Brad, I'm glad you asked. So, Keith, what was the decision in your league?
Honestly, a decision never got made. The commissioner in that league never got back to me about it, and I ended up picking up actually what I consider a serviceable running back for the week that it was available. So I just grabbed him, and I never got an answer back on that possibility.
So the fact that you never got an answer, and I know you were pretty adamant on it's not against the rules and whatnot, so you did not go through with that, even though there was no answer.
It did not go through, and it's interesting.
Why would that commissioner not get back to you? That doesn't seem.
You know who the commissioner is because he's lazy, and I'm just assuming. And I know that he was going onto other commissioner forums to find answers for it as well. Now here's my thing: it is only unethical or immoral if it happens without it being brought without transparency. So in the league that I wanted to do it with the team, the other team that I was going to do it with, we said let's talk to the commissioner, bring it to the league, see what the thoughts are on this, because it's a progressive, different approach. It's like not originalist, if you will. There's no rule against it, but at the same time, it could cause and open the door for other things that could possibly create problems down the road with people who might not be as ethical. So for me, fantasy football, it's fun. It's with friends.
Listen, you're correct. Okay, right. You're correct that if the league votes and that's the way the league wants to go, then of course there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
A league could vote to have Keith be the loser every year, and if you choose to be in that league,
I don't want to be in that kind of league.
So yes, a league, a group of guys can determine, or girls can determine how bad they want to make their rules. that's fine. I agree with you. It's only unethical if you do it and it's against the rules.
Right.
Or
You're trying to hide it. And I would, yeah.
You know,
I don't want to win that bad. I want to win the right way. And it's it's funny. I agree with you. I'm an originalist as well, if you will.
It's
I
not
love
about
that
being
term.
an originalist. There are ethics. There's a reason why it is against the ethics of fantasy football to do that. You don't do that in regular football either. And it's because it's not correct because
you can't parallel regular football with fantasy football.
In this case, I'm just saying there's a reason why.
If it had to be brought up and questioned, then you're almost saying there's potentially an issue with it, right? And it might not be an ethical thing.
Well, just because it's never been done before. It just hasn't happened. But when you look at it in one aspect of, if you're making a trade, whether it's for a week or a season, it's a trade. Why does the length have anything to do with it? It's your choice. If you're bettering your team, whether it's for the whole season or for 1 week, if it's an equal trade between two teams and they're both doing it to help both of them for 1 week,
it hurts.
What does it matter if it's for a season or
everybody agrees to it? It is unethical.
No, it has to be agreed to.
I'll be back in about 30 seconds, guys.
Okay, so listen, let's not.
It has to be agreed to.
But I am curious what other people think about this issue. 772-800-BUZZ. Or comment at Facebook Live or YouTube Live. Let us know, what do you think about 1 week trades between teams? And what I'm going to do in the meantime, I'm going to jump into running back starts real quick, and I won't spend a lot of time. But one interesting stat, 2020, that you may not be aware of about the Carolina Panthers, is that they allow the most points per reception per game to running backs. Last week, Todd Gurley ran for 121 yards and a touchdown on just 14 attempts, and he caught 4 of 5 targets for 29 yards. So who plays against Carolina this week? David Montgomery. We haven't talked a lot about Monty, but this is the week with Tariq Cohen's injury. Monty's going to be the bell cow. He's got RB1 potential. You got to start David Montgomery this week if you have him. Again, won't go into too much detail, but Alexander Mattison, we talked about on Tuesday when we were talking about your waiver wires. You got to grab this guy. It came in for Cook last week, 20 carries for 112 yards, 24 yards receiving. If you have Mattison, you got to start Mattison. Somebody that not a lot of people are talking about that I think should be on the start list is Myles Gaskin. He comes into week 6 having scored at least 13 PPR points in the last 3 of his 4 games. In San Francisco, he finally found the end zone for the first time, which was great. It gave him the extra points. So he has 3 games this year with at least 5 catches. So if you have Myles Gaskin and you're questioning whether or not you should start him, this is your week to start him. Philip Lindsay, all I can tell you is we don't have a year's worth of information on him for this year or a few weeks because he hasn't been playing. We know Melvin Gordon is out, but we know from last year that he does have top 15 potential when he's in the starting lineup. So go with Philip Lindsay. So my starters, just as a quick recap, Philip Lindsay, Alexander Mattison, David Montgomery, and Myles Gaskin. As far as sit list, Mark Ingram. Guys, if you have Mark Ingram and you keep hoping for the Mark Ingram from 2019, it's not coming. Mm-hmm. When you think about the snap percentage of the running backs in Baltimore, 35% to J.K. Dobbins, 33% to Ingram, 32% to Gus Edwards.
It's unbelievable.
When you factor Lamar Jackson into this, it's just a mess. Stay away from Mark Ingram this week. Darrell Henderson. Brad, I talked to you about this morning. McVay has already said he plans to give more work to Cam Akers. Yep. So Brown's going to get touches. Henderson's going to get touches. Akers is going to. It's a mess. I'm not touching Henderson this week. Also, people think just because Le'Veon Bell is gone that you need to start Frank Gore. Guys, stay away from Frank Gore this week. I don't necessarily believe, I know it's against Miami, and Miami has up a lot of yards, but I think that the Jets are going to use Michael Ryan a little more. I don't think that Frank Gore is going to be getting 20, 25 carries a game, and I don't think he's got the ceiling that you would normally have. So if you have a choice other than Frank Gore, go ahead and do it. And that's my start 'em, sit 'em for running backs.
All right. So right into the running back, we have another question. This is actually tough, but this Steve has these running backs. I don't know if he has to start one or two, but he's asking Burkhead, Hines, or Perrine. Now, Burkhead's interesting, right? Because you have Sony Michel at COVID is on the COVID list. And Burkhead, when there's one running back there missing now, James White is back, but Burkhead just seems to get you some points each week, right? He's going to end up with like 12 to 15 points. Could explode and have like 3 touchdowns if they're, down there on the 1 or 2 yard line and end up with 3 touchdowns. And then he's got 25, 30 points. You just don't know. But out of those 3, I stay away from Hines.
Yep.
Perrine is interesting just because Bell's now gone. But I go with Burkhead there out of those 3. And he only needs one.
Burkhead. I know, Denver has not given up a lot of points to running backs, but this is New England. So I don't know. I agree. You got to go with Burkhead here.
Yeah. Okay.
So quick question for you. So in the league that I wanted to do this trade because I have Chris Carson on bye, Eckler's injured, and I have Justin Jackson, who I love, but they're all on bye. I had to roll the best possible opportunity I had for my second running back in this league was Mark Ingram, and I agree it's awful. But it was either that or Jerick McKinnon, and with Mostert back, McKinnon has all but disappeared. So I had Ingram in over McKinnon, and it's a terrible situation. Luckily, the rest of the team should carry it. However,
you should make a trade.
Is out there. Perrine is out there. The question is, would you start Perrine over Ingram?
Why are you whispering?
Week? Because I'm really close to the mic.
Just talk normal. Pretend you're yelling at Brad.
Okay, forget about the intonation of my voice and just answer the question.
I can.
He's setting up for Birdie.
Look, if you have to start him, you have to start him. We're not suggesting that you bench Ingram and then have nobody in that slot.
No. But Perrine is out there.
Do you pick up?
No. You still go with Ingram over Perrine.
You still go with Ingram over Perrine.
Yeah.
That's what I have.
Yeah.
Right. Hopefully, you're hoping for a goal line carry. That's it.
Yeah, basically. Or like break one for like 60 yards, and then he'll end up with 12 carries for 65 yards.
Exactly. It's a guy I'm renting. It's a guy I have to rent for a week, and hopefully he'll have the 1 week that stands out this season.
All right. So listen, we only got a few more minutes. We haven't talked. You did a few of the wide receivers, Brad. Why don't you just give us a list real quick?
Yeah. I got into some of the stats. Devontae Parker. Even though his season hasn't been that good, I have him on my start list this week going against the Jets. He should get a touchdown. Looking at his numbers, he might break that 100-yard mark, but it's more likely going to be in that 70 to 80 with a touchdown, maybe 2 touchdowns, just because they're going to be able to move the ball. Justin Jefferson against Atlanta. Atlanta's defense is just awful, and I put him in there. I know he kind of had that big week and then kind of came back down to earth a little bit, but he's still getting targets.
Right.
And I think he should have a really good week this week. Crowder, as we talked about, I gave his stats. Is it possible to have someone on a start and a sit list? Like you just don't know what to do. Like Juju Smith-Schuster, right?
Yeah.
I gave his stats. His top performance he had those 2 touchdowns week 1. He's had 1 other touchdown. His top performance is 69 yards this year, but they're missing Deontay Johnson. They're going against the number 30 rated defense for pass.
He's a start week. For sure. You don't even question.
Yeah,
I know, but it's like you can make a case for both. And you
got 10 targets. You got 10 missing targets this week with Deontay Johnson. With Juju, I think it's a matter of time.
If you have him, you can make a case for both. It's funny. Like I can show you my, as I'm making all my notes, I put him on my start list, then I put him on my bench list, then I put him back on my start list. I just didn't know what to do with him just because his numbers don't qualify him for a start, but the matchup and everything else does. So, if you have him, if you don't have a much better option, start him. But if you have better options, maybe don't. It's very tough, that one for me.
All right. So
sorry, go ahead.
No.
And we talked about it. Tyler Boyd, I sit this week, even though he's got decent numbers, but they're going against the number one pass defense in the league. T. Higgins seems to be the guy there. Boyd's kind of essentially disappearing a little bit.
All right. So here's this quick start sit question for you because you're doing receivers. Would you go with Tim Patrick or would you go with Brandon Cooks?
I go with Cooks this week. You got Tim Patrick going against New England, as we talked about. Again, they just seem to scheme very well against younger quarterbacks. And you have Cooks, who came off a monster week last week. He could go back to 0 this week. You just don't know with Cooks, but I see him getting more involved in the offense. He's comfortable. So. Yeah.
And one more
New England defense, you got to go with Cooks in this case.
Exactly. One more tough one with Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson out and Fulgham being phenomenal last week, getting all the targets other than Ward. Would you go with Fulgham or would you go with Justin Jefferson?
I go with Jefferson going against Atlanta. At strict matchup, Jefferson against Atlanta rather than Fulgham against Baltimore.
Even with Thielen getting a lot of the love there, I know Jefferson, he's not getting as many targets as I would like, and that's the problem. I love Jefferson, but you don't think Fulgham's going to get 10, 12 targets this game, being the only guy there?
I think without Cook, they're going to use Madison, but I think you'll see a little bit more passing there without Cook.
Interesting. Where are you on a commission? I'm curious. Fulgham or Justin Jefferson?
I think Jefferson has shown us. I understand your issue with Fulgham, but they are going against Baltimore. So I have to, in this case, I have to go with Jefferson based on the matchup.
Interesting. Okay. All right. We shall see.
Okay. So unless you guys have anything else, I think we're going to be done for the day. We've got a whole slate of football ready to go in an hour. The wings are going to start cooking very soon. So, would love. Oh, wait, we have one more.
We have one more really good question. Wow. Look at
my
this
sister.
Game.
Okay. Debbie's in the game now. Just realized that Godwin is back. She has Godwin, Crowder, Evans, Brown, Claypool. Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
That's
First,
insane.
Deb, you need to trade with me. Let's start with that. 2, it's hard.
3 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 3 out of those 5.
I'm
Godwin
taking Marquise
and
Brown
Evans
out of that mix.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so that brings us down to the 2 Bucs receivers, Godwin and Evans, and then Crowder and Claypool. And we have to take out 2 of those.
I think you got to start Godwin and Evans. They're both studs, and I think there's room for both of them in that offense.
My only concern is just how healthy Godwin is. Obviously when he's healthy, he's an automatic start, but I'm just a little concerned about his health.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of Evans. I don't know. To be honest with you, until Godwin's 100%, I have to go with Crowder, Evans and Claypool. I know you probably think I'm crazy by benching him, but I'm sorry.
They did say Godwin had very good practices this week, and he looks like he's at full strength.
Yeah, but again, they're going to have to throw there. They're going to have to. Going against Green Bay, and that's tough. I mean, you start Godwin, you start one of them. What's going to happen is the other is going to, have the big day, right? So it's almost I'd put those 2 names in a hat, pick one, and then go with Crowder and Claypool.
I'd start them both. Tom Brady is notorious for spreading the ball around the field. I think Godwin and Evans could both have big days, and then I probably would go with Crowder over Claypool just because I think he's going to get targeted 10, 13 times in a come from behind garbage game.
All right, and then Ricky has another question here, or what has a question: T.Y. Hilton or Adam Humphries?
Well, these are 2 totally different questions. One from the other.
Right.
Godwin, Evans, or T.Y. Hilton or Humphries.
As down as I have been on Hilton, if you're asking a question between Hilton and Humphries, I have to go with Hilton until we see, with Humphries coming back, whether or not he can be what he was. Humphries might end up getting more targets, but I think Hilton has the bigger ceiling as far as a possibility or potential for points.
With a healthy A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, Humphries is a third thought in that offense. So I would go T.Y. Hilton here.
Yeah, I definitely I think we're in agreement with that as much as we don't really
I don't think that's a word.
love. Okay, well I just made it up then. It's a sniglet.
No, who did?
Was that a Bushism?
No, it was actually. I'll tell you on the next show.
Okay. Anyway, that's our thought on that.
Oh, it was Fred Durst at one of the like MTV Video Awards or something like that, and he went up there and he said agreeance,
Right.
and everyone just kind of stared at each other. And since then, it's become part of pop culture, and I think it can be used as part of colloquialism. So
right, it would be though if you want to be correct, I'm in agreement. Just for those words.
Thanks, Captain Obvious. All right,
exactly.
So we're gonna go ahead and end the show on that.
Well, it wasn't really obvious to Cyclop, was it?
We really appreciate all of the comments, of the questions. We are here for you. That's the point of this. We will be back Tuesday night. We will be going over what happened and in week 6, as well as talking about who you should possibly pick up for your waivers. So until then, guys, any last words?
No,
just be safe, enjoy week 6, be happy that we're in week 6 of football, and we're still moving.
Yep. And if you're going to go to one of these games, I know stadiums are opening, be safe, wear your mask.
All right, go Dolphins.
Go Fins.